Welcome to the Morning Slice.
Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Morning Slice. This is Brianna McNerney, your host. I am so happy to have you. Did you listen to the last episode all about communicating with our bodies? I've been thinking of you since I recorded that because I think it's so funny how life works. I talked all about how my relationship with my body is one of the things I'm proudest of in this life. And it's so funny because I have had some more challenges come up in that relationship over the past few weeks, and just always needing to revisit that work, of being persistent with self-love and just like aware of the negativity that can seep in. And I'm so grateful for the tools that I talked about, not only in that episode, but the things I share in my Conscious Wholeness course, because I continue to lean on them. But I am not perfect. So this is your friendly reminder that anything I'm sharing, I never claim to be perfect at this stuff. I am learning and growing right along with you. So just remember that it is an imperfect journey that we're on. There are highs and lows, and things will come up repeatedly over and over again for us to work through. And today's episode is actually a great example of that. Something I've been working on recently is recognizing where I'm taking responsibility that's not actually mine, and letting go of those things that I'm taking responsibility of that aren't actually mine, but also recognizing how powerful it is to take massive responsibility for our lives. And I have this suspicion, this hunch, this belief that I'm currently exploring and feeling out about how massive results come from taking massive responsibility. And to do really big things in our lives, we have to be willing to take massive responsibility. But I think that part of being able to take massive responsibility for ourselves and our results and our lives, our communities, is taking responsibility in healthy ways, in ways that work for us, in intentional ways. So to back it up a little bit, I'll share that back when I started mental health case management, I might have told the story before that I started having anxiety attacks pretty quickly into working as a mental health case manager. And just in case you're new here, I'll share that I used to work as a mental health case manager. I worked with clients who had all sorts of mental health struggles, anything from depression, anxiety, to substance abuse, to schizophrenia, and anything in between. I worked with all sorts of different people. I visited them in their homes. I helped them get to their doctor's appointments, helped them communicate with their doctors, helped them connect with community resources that could help them. And the biggest, most influential piece of being a case manager was building relationships with these people, because if they didn't trust me, then why would they listen to anything I had to say, right? But part of that process and learning how to build those relationships for me included setting healthy boundaries around the responsibility I was taking, because like I said, I started having these anxiety attacks, and it was happening because I was taking so much responsibility for my clients and what was happening in their lives. So like, for instance, if I got a call that my client was in the hospital because they had had like an acute mental health episode, I would just lose it and feel like it was something that I did wrong that led to their being hospitalized, and felt like I, did something wrong, did something bad. I should have called them. I should have done XYZ, whatever thing. And part of my healing process to, become more effective, actually, to stop having anxiety attacks and be able to actually help people in an even more impactful way, was to recognize where I was taking way too much responsibility for their results and then hand the power back to them, right? Because when I was taking the responsibility, I was actually taking something from them. It was very empowering for my clients once I started reinforcing for them what were their responsibilities. Like, what could I do? And then what couldn't I do? What did they need to do for themselves? And always being there to support them, of course, but really making sure that they always understood that their life was their responsibility. And it led to having a really engaged but like self-sufficient and independent caseload, which was incredible and not that common. I remember several times I went on vacation and my supervisor was like shocked when I came back, just telling me that people hadn't really needed that much help, and the people who did need help had just great things to say about how much progress they were making with my support. So I'm coming back around full circle to this lesson recently of like, I need to release responsibility of things that aren't mine and realize what is mine to hold, but again, releasing what isn't so that other people can pick up what they need to pick up, and so that I can create more space to take massive responsibility and create massive results in the ways that actually makes sense for me to do that, in the way that it's actually impactful and effective for me to do that. So I'm taking you along for the ride today. Let's get into it. The way I see it, there are two ends on a spectrum of taking responsibility. There's, on one hand, people who take way too much responsibility, who like pick up tasks without a second thought. And then there are people who take little to no responsibility for anything, including themselves. And of course, a spectrum in between. And we can all be, guilty of either of these, depending on the day. But that said, if you're here, my guess is that you probably lean to the side of taking too much responsibility, because if you didn't take any responsibility, then you probably wouldn't be here listening to like a self-development oriented sort of a podcast. So I'm only going to speak to that side today, where we pick up responsibility for things without a second thought. If someone brings us a task that needs to be done, we take it under our belt and we do it. We try to make our loved ones' lives better, and we take responsibility for the experience that they're having. It could look like micromanaging people's emotional experiences, like trying to help them stay happy, or, whatever it may look like. But when we pick up responsibility like this, we're not necessarily creating the best interpersonal dynamics for ourselves. So we create either codependency, when we're taking way too much responsibility for other people in a way that doesn't actually serve us or them, because we're sourcing our sense of being valuable in our ability to do things for them. Or independence that is not serving you. So independence that results in like loneliness and capping your ability to create or do bigger things because you can't really delegate and get the help you need due to taking everything on yourself and or needing things to be done your way, because we're trying to source our value from not needing help or doing everything by ourselves. when what we really want to cultivate is more interdependence, where we all are taking responsibility for ourselves 100%, and we're all taking responsibility for the well-being of our shared resources and our community. This is a dynamic where we trust the intrinsic value of ourselves and of other people, where we hold ourselves in high esteem and we hold others in that same light. There are definitely things outside of us that are our responsibility, like our children and the well-being of kids around us. Our pets, making sure our pets are taken care of and well trained. We're responsible for how we treat ourselves. We're responsible for our actions, how we treat others, what we do or don't do, like the actions that we take or don't take. We are responsible for the well-being of the planet that we live on. But there are things that aren't necessarily our responsibility. Other people's actions, other people's opinions of us. Like if there's something that we really cannot control, it doesn't help us to take on responsibility for those things. It just doesn't, because there's nothing that we can do about it. And we are not responsible for the experience that other people have. Like we are all bringing different experiences and life history to the table. So something that impacts me one way could impact you a totally different way. And there's nothing that I can do to change that. We can be responsible for how we show up for other people in moments like that, but we cannot inherently take control or responsibility of the experience that someone else has, like how they interpret something that we said or how they physically feel or respond to something that's happened. Again, we can support other people. We can get curious about what their experience is like. We can ask questions and show up in a loving way without necessarily taking responsibility. Because the truth of the matter is that when we take responsibility for things that aren't ours, we are robbing people of their own empowerment. We are robbing people of their own power and control over their life circumstances. Nothing feeds into somebody's powerlessness like us coming in and taking the reins of something that they are responsible for, that they should be doing. We're also limiting our bandwidth to take responsibility for the things that really matter, where we actually can have an impact. So how do we get to a place where we can let people take responsibility for what they need to take responsibility for, and we take responsibility of what is ours, so that we can do the work that's ours to do in the world, and we can control and create the life that we want for ourselves, while also letting people come in and collaborating with them in a way that feels good, because we can let them do things their way. Well, first, we have to notice when someone brings a problem to you, or you notice something that another person or a situation needs. What is your first response? What is your knee-jerk reaction? Do you instantly want to take responsibility for that? Do you instantly add that task to your plate? What does that look like? And then reflect on that a little bit, like why that might be your first response. So for me, when I'm working through this sort of thing, I often come back to the shame and grief and guilt that I felt over the type of sister that I was when I was a kid, after my parents got divorced and then lost my first love to suicide. And shortly after that, was sexually assaulted. I was having a bear of a time, as you can imagine, and I exposed my younger sibling to things that I really wish that I hadn't. And I wish I had been there for him in a different way, in like a better way, in a more competent, responsible, like nurturing, loving way. And I didn't. And that has led me over time as I grow and like reflect on the person I want to be, that has led me to feel just so much guilt. And at times I've energetically took way too much responsibility for his life now that we're both adults. So like, past the point of learning, because I think one of the things that we can take responsibility for is like when we notice that we maybe did something in the past that impacted somebody else in a negative way, or a way that we wish we would have done differently. We can grow from that. We can learn from that. We can take something like shame or guilt and say, I want to do this differently moving forward. But once we've reached a point where we've had the conversations, we've made our amends, we've said our sorries, we have changed the way that we interact with people to the best of our ability, then it's time to really release the responsibility that we have taken, that we are holding from that person or the situation, so that the responsibility can be divvied up in a way that actually makes sense, so that the person in question can pick their end back up and actually do something with it, rather than us hoarding all of the responsibility and actually getting completely overwhelmed with doing that. So today, I want you to evaluate the responsibilities that are on your plate day to day. How are these responsibilities feeling for you? Are they all meant to be yours? Are they all meant to be yours? What sorts of things let you know that this is something that you want to take responsibility for? And how can you know when something needs to fall off the plate? So again, if you're taking responsibility, mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever, if you're taking responsibility for someone else's actions, someone else's experiences, someone else's opinions of you, these are things that you will exhaust yourself taking responsibility for, because there's nothing that you can do about those things, right? When you see a problem, are you immediately picking it up? And how are you vetting whether or not you are actually the best person to be taking on that responsibility? Maybe it is time to make a more rigorous vetting process for the things that you take responsibility for, so that you can free up your bandwidth for the things that actually are in your realm of control. So the way that you think, feel, respond, experience, the actions that you take, the systems that you're building and contributing to, the impact that you're having on other people and the world through your actions, your words, your speech. Like, how are you showing up? That's what you can take responsibility for. And people who do this, who create a strong foundation of healthy responsibility for themselves, their community, their world that they're living in the ways that make sense for them to take responsibility for, in the ways that they can actually control. So taking responsibility when it makes sense, and then making sure that when the responsibility lays with somebody else, that we're not taking that from them, that we're handing it back to them, that we're empowering other people to be in charge of their own life, their own destiny, their own experience. When we can master this, people who take massive responsibility like this can get massive results. But again, it needs to start with self-responsibility, healthy, integrated self-responsibility, and then grow from there. So that's what I have for you guys today on taking responsibility. What did this bring up for you? What questions is it bringing up for you? I would love to hear about it. Please leave a comment, leave a review of this podcast. Message me on social media, whatever it may be. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear what your experience has been listening to this. I would love to hear your feedback so I can get better. I would love to hear what topics you would love to hear me talk about. Let's connect. Let's discuss. If you're looking for more support with this and sussing this all out, I would love to do an epiphany session with you. My epiphany sessions are 2-hour working consultations. So that means that we are looking at what it is that you want. What are your goals? What are you trying to create? And what are the barriers that you're experiencing? Internally, externally, like what are the challenges that you're facing when it comes to getting your goals, when it comes to getting your work out into the world in a meaningful way? What are your desires? What are your challenges? And then we will create shifts for you right away by A, working through those barriers, B, by evaluating different parts of yourself that might be in conflict with what you actually want to create, and bringing more wholeness and more integration and more deep self-love to every single part of yourself. And if it makes sense at that point to continue working together, then you will have an opportunity to do that too. But I'll say many people have had these epiphany sessions and created the momentum, the movement that they need right away. Creating a quick result actually is something I'm sure that we can do together. So every single person I've met for an epiphany session has had some kind of instant noticeable result, felt result from working with me. The more challenging thing is the maintenance of that, right? The integration, the ongoing support to like set a new standard for yourself moving forward, to really anchor those realizations, that epiphany into your like ongoing life experience. So if you want my support ongoing, that is something we can definitely talk about after an epiphany session. And conscious wholeness is also coming back. So if you're looking to do some deep self-reflection around these topics that we've brought up today, then conscious wholeness could be super helpful. And I would love to have you on the list when that becomes available. So if you want to get the scoop on that as soon as possible, then you have a couple options. You can sign up for my 5 days of wholeness experience. I will link to that in the show notes. That will get you on the wait list for conscious wholeness. And you can also just shoot me a message on any social media platform and say, hey, Brianna, I would love to know when you're out with conscious wholeness again. I think that sounds great. and I can get you on the wait list manually. And just let me know if you have any questions. I will also have booking links. So not only if you want to book an epiphany session with me, that link's in the show notes. You can also book like a no pressure coffee chat with me. I would love to catch up. I would love to hear how you're doing, answer any questions you have, share how I'm doing, whatever. Let's connect. Let's talk. I miss you. I'm sure of it. And I would love to hear how you're doing. So I hope we can connect again soon. And I will talk to you later.